On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched the largest military operation in the Middle East since the Iraq War. Khamenei is dead. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. Oil is up 20%. And Europe's leaders are holding emergency meetings, not to help, but to distance themselves. Here's what this war actually means for European defense, and why the next few weeks could reshape NATO faster than anything since Ukraine. At 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time on February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel initiated Operation Epic Fury, launching coordinated air and missile strikes against Iranian military and nuclear sites. U.S. Central Command described the operation as the largest deployment of American force in the region in decades. Within hours, Iranian state media confirmed the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The official statement, published at 8:32 GMT on March 1st, declared a 40-day period of mourning. Strikes were reported in 6 Iranian cities: Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, Kermanshah, and Elam. Iran's immediate response targeted U.S. military installations across the Gulf. Announced in official Iranian statements and corroborated by satellite imagery, ballistic and cruise missiles struck U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, as well as the commercial port of Jebel Ali in the United Arab Emirates. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical corridor for global energy flows, saw maritime traffic collapse. Marine traffic and Kepler data showed over 150 tankers anchored or moored, with vessel movement through the strait dropping by approximately 70% compared to the previous week. Shipping giant Maersk suspended all crossings, and the Greek Ministry of Shipping issued an advisory for Greek-flagged vessels to avoid the region. In energy markets, Brent crude jumped 10% to around $80 per barrel, with a year-to-date increase of 20%. These figures reflect the immediate shock to supply and the heightened risk premium. All data are drawn from official releases, commercial dashboards, and verified government notices. This situation remains fluid, and some details may be updated as new information emerges. French President Emmanuel Macron described the strikes as an outbreak of war that carries serious consequences for international peace and security. The European Union's joint statement called the developments greatly concerning and urged maximum restraint from all parties. In London, Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed that British aircraft are in the sky as part of coordinated regional defensive operations to protect our people, our interests, and our allies, but he stressed that the UK's role is strictly limited to air defense. Meanwhile, in Berlin, opposition leader Friedrich Merz said during a Bundestag briefing that Germany was informed in advance, yet emphasized that the government had publicly distanced itself from any escalation. This rapid succession of statements revealed not only a clear divergence in policy, but also a fundamental question about the unity of the transatlantic alliance. The United Kingdom stands almost alone among major European powers in contributing military assets, and even then, only for narrowly defined defensive purposes. France and Germany, along with most EU member states, have chosen diplomatic restraint and non-participation. At NATO headquarters, the Secretary-General clarified that the alliance had not convened Article 4 or Article 5 consultations. He reiterated that collective defense applies when a member is attacked, but noted that the current situation, strikes on non-NATO facilities and assets, does not meet the formal threshold for triggering the alliance's core commitment. This ambiguity underscores the legal and political complexity facing European governments as they weigh alliance obligations against national interests. The debate over the legitimacy and scope of collective defense is no longer theoretical. It is now at the center of Europe's security dilemma. Roughly 15% of the European Union's total crude oil imports arrive through the Strait of Hormuz. This figure, drawn from Eurostat and Kepler routing analyses, translates to more than 3 million tons of oil each month, with Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands most exposed. On the liquefied natural gas front, 14 Qatar-origin LNG carriers, flagged to European operators, were caught in transit as the closure unfolded. Their scheduled deliveries, representing about 8% of Europe's Qatari LNG supply for the month, now face delays of 7 to 10 days as routes shift around Africa's southern tip. The EU's energy security buffer, its strategic petroleum reserve, holds the equivalent of roughly 70 days of net oil consumption. This stockpile is designed for short-term shocks, not for a prolonged disruption of Gulf flows. If the strait remains closed for more than 6 weeks, reserve drawdowns would accelerate, and member states would be forced to consider mandatory release mechanisms. Brent crude's rapid rise to $80 per barrel, a 10% jump in a single day, has pushed prices near the upper boundary of what European fiscal models describe as a stress band. According to IMF and ECB estimates, sustained prices above $85 to $95 per barrel would begin to erode fiscal buffers in major economies. Further escalation could push governments to weigh rationing, subsidies, or even coordinated demand reduction. The situation is evolving, and while these figures are based on the latest available data, they remain subject to revision as new flows and emergency measures are confirmed. Isfahan's nuclear research center sustained visible damage during the initial wave of strikes, according to preliminary satellite images from Maxar and Planet. Smoke plumes and collapsed roof sections are evident, but the resolution does not allow for a full assessment of the facility's operational status. The neighboring drone manufacturing complex, also struck, shows similar surface disruption. These sites play a central role in Iran's uranium conversion and drone production, both of which have direct implications for proliferation risk. In contrast, the Fordow enrichment plant, located approximately 80 meters underground and designed to withstand heavy bombardment, was not reported as hit. Iranian officials state that Fordow remains operational, though this claim has not been independently verified. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, responded with a press statement expressing concern and formally requesting unrestricted access to all affected sites, including Isfahan and Fordow. As of the latest update, IAEA inspectors have not been granted entry, and remote sensing alone cannot confirm the extent of any compromise to Iran's enrichment capacity. The agency's mandate is to verify that no diversion of nuclear material occurs, but without on-site inspection, the risk of undeclared activity increases. For European security planners, this partial damage presents a complex scenario. If surface facilities are degraded but the core enrichment infrastructure remains intact and unmonitored, the potential for rapid proliferation rises. The lack of full IAEA access introduces uncertainty, making it more difficult for European governments to assess the true scale of the threat and to calibrate their own defense and non-proliferation policies accordingly. Intelligence agencies across Europe have moved to a higher state of alert. In Paris, the DGSI raised the national threat level to heightened, citing credible indications of Iranian proxy activity. Germany's BfVi issued a public warning of increased foreign state operations, urging vigilance around critical infrastructure and transport networks. In the United Kingdom, MI5 advised enhanced security measures for diplomatic sites and major public events, with a particular focus on London and Manchester. Open-source intelligence and arrest records confirm the operational presence of IRGC Quds Force and Hezbollah-linked cells in several European capitals. Paris, Berlin, London, Rome, Amsterdam, Stockholm, and Vienna are cited in recent security service bulletins as locations where logistics hubs, safe houses, or dual-use procurement channels have been identified. While the exact number of operatives remains classified, public reporting points to a pattern of periodic arrests and asset freezes tied to suspected Iranian networks. Diaspora statistics from Eurostat highlight the largest Iranian-born diaspora communities in Paris, London, Berlin, Stockholm, and Vienna. Paris is home to approximately 120,000 people of Iranian origin. London is home to 97,000. Berlin is home to 45,000. Stockholm is home to 30,000. Vienna is home to 12,000. Security officials caution that these clusters, while not inherently at risk, could be targeted for soft attacks or used as cover for proxy operations. Agency spokespeople stress that these alerts are precautionary, not predictive. The situation is evolving, and advisories may be updated as new intelligence emerges. What is clear is that the conflict's front lines now extend into European urban centers, placing additional demands on police, intelligence, and counterterrorism resources. The European Commission announced a reallocation of €30 billion from the SAFE Fund, redirecting resources from long-term modernization to immediate crisis response. This decision, confirmed in a press release on March 2nd, effectively pivots part of the €150 billion Strategic Autonomy for Europe program toward air defense, naval patrols, and energy infrastructure protection. On the same day, equity markets delivered their own verdict. Rheinmetall shares rose 3.2%, KNDS gained 2.8%, and BAE Systems climbed 1.9%. Analysts at Bloomberg and Reuters attributed these moves to heightened demand for European-made defense systems and a growing recognition that the continent's security environment has fundamentally changed. Four assumptions that underpinned European defense planning as of late February are no longer valid. First, the expectation that major Middle East disruptions would be contained outside Europe's immediate energy lifelines has collapsed. Second, the belief that NATO's Article 5 would remain a distant theoretical safeguard is now in question, as alliance consultations shift from the abstract to the urgent. Third, the SAFE Fund's original focus on cyber and eastern flank threats is being overtaken by the need for maritime and air defense in the south. Fourth, the idea that strategic reserves could bridge any supply gap has proven limited, and market signals and government statements both point to the risk of prolonged shortages. European defense officials now face two scenario endgames. In one, the Iranian regime survives but with a damaged nuclear program, driving a new arms race and persistent proxy threats. In the other, regime collapse or fragmentation produces a power vacuum, with proliferation risks and regional instability spilling over. Either outcome renders the pre-crisis defense posture obsolete. The safe reallocation and market rally are not just reactions. They are mandates for a rapid overhaul of Europe's security strategy. The situation remains fluid, and all measures are subject to revision as events unfold. Europe's energy and security assumptions now face their sharpest test in decades. As NATO unity fractures and Gulf oil flows remain uncertain, policymakers confront hard limits on reserves, on cohesion, and on time. The next decisions will shape not just European defense, but its resilience in a world remade overnight.